If you've spent any time with retro games, one of the terms you've undoubtedly come across is scanlines. But what are scanlines? Well, when people refer to scanlines, they're talking about an image that has alternating black lines in between each line of the image. And some people will tell you that technically the actual scanlines are not the black lines, but the lines of the image itself. Either way, this is what it looks like, and it's a very desired visual effect for retro games, with some purists believing that retro games just aren't right without them. The idea is that they help better define the pixel art of the 2D games that they are so commonly associated with. However, with scanlines often comes a couple of other benefits as well. Let me explain. The original way to have scanlines show up in your retro games was to plug your original hardware straight into an old CRT TV. Yep, the big old tube TVs. This was, of course, just the standard way we'd hook up games back in the day because big old tube TVs were all we had. By default, these games would give you scanlines, and not only that, but they'd be displayed at a proper resolution and be missing input lag, among other benefits that fans of CRTs will gladly tell you about. Sorry if this starts to sound like another endorsement for CRT TVs, but scanlines and CRT TVs are just intrinsically connected. It's kind of impossible to talk about one without the other if you ask me. CRT TVs used a really unique trick to create these scanlines as well. You see, most CRT TVs would display an image of 480 lines that would constantly alternate, which caused the image to look a little bit fuzzy. This is what's referred to as a 480i image. However, using a clever trick by slicing those 480 lines in half to just 240 lines, you would no longer have that fuzzier image of alternating lines. And you would get those beautiful black lines running through the image that would help better define the image, at least in the minds of the fans of scanlines it would. So it just kind of feels like a win-win. Okay, so what about scanlines on more modern TVs? It must be possible, right? Yes, it definitely is, but you're going to need to be running your games through hardware that can, in essence, fix the image so that it runs properly. This includes both appropriating the resolution and adding the option for scanlines. If you plug the original hardware straight into an HD TV, you're not going to get scanlines and the resolution is going to get stretched out, which there are some gamers who are willing to tolerate this since it's a plug-and-play setup, but given the choice, it's just not the best option. So what are the best options? Well, you're going to need some dedicated hardware. This could be a dedicated device that converts the signals from older consoles, or perhaps just an entirely new console that is built around being displayed on a more modern TV. The consoles from Analog Interactive are a great example of this. I won't get into all of the different kinds of consoles that are built around displaying older games on HD TVs, but I will quickly mention the mini consoles since they seem to be so popular and received a lot of buzz. While these mini consoles do present an image that looks clean as far as redrawing the pixels in a resolution that looks good, the scanline filters they come with aren't exactly perfect. If you really want to, you can always hack these consoles and adjust the scanline filter, so there is that. However, typically the best scanline filter options straight out of the box come with more expensive devices, though not always. I should mention that the scanline filter available on something like a Raspberry Pi is actually a really good one as far as I'm concerned, and those can be had for pretty cheap. That's the visual effect you're seeing here. There's other cheap options as well. You'll just have to take the time to look through all of them and see what works for you. Anyways, regardless of what type of scanline filter you're able to use on a HD TV, these scanlines are just not the same as the ones that appear on a CRT TV. Doesn't mean they look bad, but just be aware that they aren't the same. Funny enough, the scanlines you see that are built around HD TVs are actually very similar looking to the scanlines you'll find on TVs that are called PVMs and BVMs, which are essentially like higher-end CRT TVs. These types of TVs weren't really sold to the public back in the day and were more commonly used in broadcast, video production type settings, or in the medical industry. And of course, they're pretty expensive to buy nowadays, so that's right, you heard it from me first. The next time you're at a hospital visiting a sick person or newborn baby, find somebody working there and ask them, hey, you wouldn't happen to have any old TVs in storage, would ya? You see, I am a gamer. Anyways, these TVs are highly regarded, and the way Scanlines look on them is very similar to how the best Scanlines simulated on HT TVs are going to look. But like I said before, there's not really any way to simulate what Scanlines look like on a regular CRT TV without, you guessed it, playing on a regular CRT TV. The intricacies are kind of hard to capture on film, but the way the pixels show up on screen is very unique, as there seems to be spacing between the pixels not only running horizontally but vertically as well. It's not necessarily better, but it is different and will come down to preference. Also, I should point out that there are absolutely people who are hardcore about retro games, but not Scanlines. They don't always go hand in hand. Sure, there's some people who will act elitist when it comes to Scanlines, but hey, what don't people act elitist about? I think a lot of it comes back to the fact that these originally appeared with Scanlines as part of their look, so the belief is that the visual artists and people drawing these pixels had the Scanlines in mind when creating them. I feel like if you asked some of these artists about this, they'd have varying opinions, but they were all certainly well aware that their games would be played on CRTs, and therefore with Scanlines. Anyways, what is your personal preference when it comes to Scanlines? Do you like them, not like them, or perhaps are just kind of indifferent about them? I personally really like them, but I'm okay with not having them so long as the image is clean. I mean, heck, a lot of indie 2D games don't have Scanlines at all, and I never notice anybody complaining about that. Alright, so leave your comments down below as usual, and I will see ya in the next video.